It's a big interview, and this is a treat. It's a late summer treat, and thanks to the increasingly under pressure FIFA for creating a little break in their schedule, because we're able to welcome a man from West Bromwich, I think, to our midst for the first time.
Only born in West Bromwich, Graham, and I had no choice in that.
That wasn't meant to be a slide tackle for me earlier on, manager. It was really only supposed to be a point of, but there we begin, because tell me what, I don't know how long you lived there, but what was the Midlands in the 70s like to grow up in? And you were born in West Bromwich. Everybody knows that Villa's your beloved club, and Villa's a club that you're steering to potentially to greatness again. We'll come back to that. Growing up, I'm thinking about noises, sounds, culture, attitudes, behaviour around you growing up in the West Midlands in the 70s.
Well, I think it was an enjoyable time for me. I think because we, as kids at that time in the 70s, we were allowed to be kids. We were allowed to go out and play in, whether it be the school playground, the local woods, the local fields, and there was a trust there from parents, from neighbours, that everybody would look out for everybody. Because, you know, I'm from a working class background. My dad worked in a factory all his life. My mum was doing jobs all over the place and normally dragging me and my brother with her, whether it was cleaning offices and, you know, we would be playing football in the corridors while she was cleaning offices, or whether she was doing, you know, a dinner lady duty at a school. You know, so there was always working hard. So there was always me and my brother who were left at home pretty much. And along with our mates, we would go and play football, or we would go and climb trees and fall out of trees. And, you know, it was the sort of childhood, but it was really enjoyable because we were all doing it. You know, and my two best mates have always been my two best mates from when I was a kid and to where I am now. And that will never change because, you know, we're from the same backgrounds and we've got the same values. And but it was tough for my mum and dad, but it was enjoyable for us as kids because we were allowed to play, we were allowed to scrap, but we're allowed to play all kinds of sports.
Is that the kind of upbringing that breeds creativity, because you can do everything? You know, a tree becomes a castle, or does it allows you to risk? I mean, listen, I'm speaking for myself here, but without doing any damage, we used to nick in and out of people's gardens to see if we had the sphincter for it. Just no badness. And in fact, we thought we were the great train robbers if we nicked into somebody's garden, pinched an apple, and nicked out again. I feel that, although I'm a lot older than you, if it sounds like it's an upbringing where you can try things out at a young age and see, that was just about acceptable, that wasn't. But you fall over, you scrape something, you maybe break a window, whatever, and you start to get a value system in your head, and it breeds creativity. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. It breeds creativity. You learn from mistakes as well. Is one of the biggest things that I've probably taken from my experiences. We all make mistakes all the time. It's how you learn from them and how you get better. But that creativity side, you know, if we didn't have a football, then we'd play football with a tennis ball. Or would play cricket, and when it got dark, we used the curbs to have a game of Kirby with a football, and, you know, under the street lights. And, you know, there was a lot of talk about, you know, the 10,000 hours of creating, you know, that perfect footballer or pianist or violinist. But part of the 10,000 hours for me is that athletic development of climbing trees and, you know, having the Grand National down a street where you're hedge hopping. You know, unfortunately, there's too many drives and cars now, so you can't do it, or the kids can't do it. But that was part of our athletic development, and for me, part of our 10,000 hours as well.
Were the places that you counted as your growing up streets, whether they be in leisure time or in school time, were they changing culturally? Were they changing in terms of the sights, the sounds, the cooking smells, the colours of skin you saw, the music, or or was that slow to change?
In the area I was brought up, that was slow to change. You know, it was probably when I went to senior school that you saw more change, and you was more aware of the cultural change that was happening at that time. You know, I think at the time it was probably stuck from area to area, but I think there's been an expansion and more diversity, you know, across the country and across the world, and you know, you had to get used to that, and you certainly did. But you know, going to football matches certainly helped you get used to diversity and the different cultures, because you know, a football club like Aston Villa was in the middle of probably one of the poorer areas in Birmingham. You know, and it was an area where my dad was brought up, but obviously I think I spent a lot of time in London as well when I was at Leyton Orient, and I remember a story that the chairman had told me, Barry Hearn, and I think they only had 400 season ticket holders from within the catchment area, because you know it became more popular to move out of the area into a more affluent area and live there. So I probably found that around the Villa ground as well. My dad was brought up in Aston, but he had managed to, you know, earn enough money to move out of the area, and we moved to an area called Great Bar, and that's where I spent, you know, all of my childhood and younger years. And what probably helped me is I had an elder brother as well who was 2 years older, and I probably played with him and his mates. So I was always playing out of my age group, so to speak, because I was playing with his mates.
Why, Dean, and I know I'm on dangerous ground, but this isn't provocative. Why weren't the 3 degrees? Why wasn't Remy Moses and Statham and Ali Brown and Robertson and the mighty Cyril Regis? Why wasn't that in any way tempting to you? Because we all have that moment when I don't think we necessarily always go, that's my team. We, after 6-8 months of going to games or something, like, we go, oh, I feel something. That's me, and that's you for life. You know, I'm Aberdeen that's just forever and ever and ever. We're not like the new sort that follow the stars around. Why was that not tempting to you? Because I mean, we'll come on to Villa in a minute, but that was one hell of a West Brom side.
Oh, it was. But right from the start, when I said I was actually born in West Bromwich because it was the nearest hospital, but I lived in Birmingham, and my dad had always been a Villa fan. His dad had always been a Villa fan, and you know, he'd been a steward there for 25 years, and you know, we got taken to the games at 5 and 6 years old, and you know, I remember having tantrums on a Saturday morning when I had to go to my nan's with my mum, and my dad would take my brother to the game because he was 2 years older than me. You know, and I used to end up in the Bullring Centre having a Knickerbocker Glory to try and calm me down. But you know, I mean, so they're my memories. But you know, one of my favourite players was Brian Robson, who was playing for West Brom.
Yeah.
You know, because we saw him play for England all the time, and international football for me was a lot more of a, how can you say, I think it glued the actual area together. Everybody was an England fan. You know, everybody watched the national team playing. So, you know, Brian Robson was, you know, a hero of mine at that time. But then also Andy Gray was at Villa, and I remember, and this is where I can empathise with the Villa fans now with Jack Grealish going. I remember Andy Gray going to Wolves, and I was devastated as a 10-year-old lad. You know, him going and signing for Wolves for what was £1 million, I think it was at the time. You know, and but out of that grew new heroes in Gary Shaw and Peter Wiv, and the team that won the league and then won the European Cup. And you know, I was very fortunate to be able to watch, you know, my team at that time in what was their greatest ever era.
Then before we touch on that, because to me too, it was stunning. It was uplifting. They played a brand of football that was extraordinary. I didn't know it, but my team was on the verge of winning, literally 2 years later, winning 2 European trophies. So I want to ask about that impact. But Villa Park, which you know inside out now, which dances to the beat of your team. But when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, what are your first memories of what it looked like? Because it's one of those beautiful stadiums. Maybe it's not as symmetrical, maybe as the modern ones, but it's huge, it's imposing, it feels part of the Aston, because it rises up out of the houses, and it was noisy. And I remember when I was young, the smells and the sounds and the voices and the swearing, that where you're maybe with your dad and somebody's swearing away and he's not clipping you, but those first impressions, as the associates once say.
Yeah, I mean, the first was the smell of Bovril. I think everybody had Bovril at half time, and I still don't mind a Bovril now when I go to some of these grounds and at half time. But it was the excitement, not just of the game, because the game itself was, Villa Park was atmospheric. Whether it was the home team who were winning, fans were behind them, but you could always hear the away fans as well, and atmosphere there. But it was also, even just at half time, you had to wait for this billboard to come up and people to put the halftime scores of other games during the league at that time, and you'd be waiting for them scores to come through, and then you'd have a man with an orange tray selling some orange or a bag of crisps or a pie, and that was it. There was a familiarity. Can you still hear me, Graham? Because
simpler familiarity, but simpler pleasures that really meant a lot to us as youngsters.
It was. I mean, we used to go up the Holte End and stand in the same place, and we knew 50 people around us, and we all used to look out for each other, who was around us, and it was great because then it was terracing, and if there was a chance, you swayed and you ended up 10 foot away from where you actually was before. And there was times when you took crates up there to stand on, or you sat on the bar and you scored and somebody else in front would catch it as you fell off. But it was that familiarity, and it was just a really good time to watch football. And
who stood out for you? Who really stood? Because I remember Big Mortimer. Mortimer looked like some sort of Hollywood model, because with the long dark hair, he had the right physique. He wasn't born ugly. Sometimes he had a moustache, and he used to seem to sashay and sway through midfield. But the guy who did it for me, the guy who knocked me out all the time, was Morley. As a dedicated fan, who were the ones that stole your heart?
When I first started watching, as I said earlier, it was Andy Gray and Brian Little. And then, we had that golden era. And I suppose for me, it was Gary Shaw and Sid Cowans. And I've been fortunate enough to actually play with Gary Shaw. He came to Walsall he had a lot of injuries, and I played with him at Walsall, but also become good friends with Sid Cowans. Sid Cowans and Paul McGrath are probably two of the best players I've seen play for Aston Villa. It was just, I liked the way Ron Saunders acted around the players. He was no nonsense, straight to the point. He only used 14 players to win the championship in 80-81, and then they went on and won the European Cup the following year. But the ones that I looked up to then, as I say, Andy Gray, Brian Little, and then it was Gary Shaw, Sid Cowans, and later when I was actually involved in football and playing myself, still watching Villa from afar, it became Paul McGrath. And I do remember one player who we signed, a French player who everybody really got excited about, called Didier Six.
Didier Six, yeah.
Oh, I remember him coming and playing against Manchester United, and we were sat in the Trinity Road by the dugouts, and it was like we hadn't seen foreign flair before, and it was so exciting to go and watch him. But even playing the season we won the title, going and watching the game against Ipswich and seeing Arnold Muren play and players like that, Frank Tyson, it was great to see that there was actual foreign flair coming into the game then. And we have to be honest about it. That's what's actually, probably improved, our league and the way we play football as a nation.
Those that didn't see Gordon Cowans, because he was a star in Italy, he's been mentioned a lot on this podcast because along with Alan Devonshire, he represents to me the kind of hidden midfielders who were phenomenal, gems, but probably didn't get wide enough recognition. From a football perspective, as well as from a fan's perspective, why was Sid so special to you? People that didn't see him, try and encapsulate him.
He could do everything. He could tackle. He wasn't built with a massive physique, but he never shirked a tackle. And he had that ability of sliding in and wrapping his foot around the ball and coming out the other side with it. But his passing range was incredible, right foot and left foot. And I was fortunate enough to know, become good friends with Pat Hurd, who played for a short period for Villa, was on the bench when they won the European Cup. And he used to say that, Sid Cowans, he could peel oranges with his toes. He was that good.
Well, in that case, this our sponsors, Bet365, want us to ask you. It's a tough one, so I apologise. But we've led each other into this. They say, who's the most talented player you have worked with? Because you've set a stall out with watching McGrath and Sid Cowans and Andy Gray, Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year in the same season.
Same year, 77.
I don't know I don't think it had been done before. I'm not even sure it's been done since. But this sticks it right on you. Dean, who's the most talented player you've worked with? And if you want to dodge the question, you can say or watched. They didn't ask that, but I'm giving you feedback.
No, I don't need to not dodge it because he's just been sold for £100 million. It's an easy one. Jack Grealish is a phenomenal talent. And the biggest thing I like about him is he knows he's talented, he's confident in his own ability, but he's humble enough and coachable. And they're the two words that I think are really strong in terms of, helping to, because my job is as a teacher of football to help players, fulfill their potential, get better. And he was coachable. And that's a big word for me because there are some players who aren't coachable. When, you tell them something, you 2 weeks later, you're telling them again. 4 weeks later, if you're telling them, then you've got a problem. Jack didn't have that. You could tell him something and he'd come and ask you a question the following day about it because he would have processed it, gone home, had a look. And he just improved all the time. And, I've told the story before and I know he's just told it recently. When I first came into the club, I think we were 12 games into a championship season and he had 0 goals and 1 assist. And I said, you want to be at the top of this game, you're not going to be with them numbers. You've got to concentrate on getting your numbers up. And I showed him a video clip, and I think it was against Preston, which might have been Steve Bruce's last game. And Jack was picking up the ball behind our centre halves. I said, you've now got 11 players to go and beat, to go and create some.
We're more than just a product of what we do. I think things around us genuinely influence us. So, for example, I'm Aberdonian. When Ferguson came and we started to beat Rangers and Celtic, but then we beat Bayern Munich and we beat Real Madrid and we beat European champions Hamburg. It was glorious. It felt fantastic. It was uplifting. But when I watched and listened to the players and to Ferguson saying, we're not scared of anybody, we'll take on anybody, and then they go and tip people over, it changed me as an individual. It had an influence on me. I felt the world is my oyster. No challenge is too big. You might bump your nose on a challenge, but it's worth it. You learn, you'll go on. And it inbuilt more aggression and competitive aggression in me than I was born with. Do you think any of that holds true for you beyond the joy of lifting a claret and blue scarf up when they Villa win the title? Only 8 points ahead of West Brom. So that was a powerful time for those two communities. 8 points ahead in 81. And then beating Dinamo Berlin and Dinamo Kiev and Bayern Munich to win the European Cup, and then thrashing Barcelona, which we'll come to for the Super Cup. Did it have an effect on you as a person, your confidence, your attitude?
Yeah, yes, it did. I can honestly say at the time I didn't know that it was. But now I can reflect and look back, and definitely, when Villa won that league title with just 14 players, there was a bond with the supporters, with the players. There was a feeling where it just brought everybody together. Villa were historically one of the biggest clubs, but hadn't really had an awful lot of success. We won the League Cup in 75, 77, but league title hadn't been probably since 1910 or something like that, I think. So it'd been a really long period with all the history that the football club had, and it brought the community together. And as I said, Ron Saunders at that time was, I don't know him personally, but he appeared to be a disciplinarian. And it was, play hard, enjoy yourself. As long as you played hard and worked hard, go and enjoy yourself. But then when you come back, make sure you work hard again. And I think that influenced an awful lot of people around here. And, as you said, Villa only finished 8 points clear of West Brom. I can pretty much name the West Brom team from that year. I can name the Liverpool team. I can name the Ipswich team, all the teams that were challenging, and the Arsenal teams. Whereas, probably 8 years ago, whoever won the title, Man City, Chelsea, Man United, I don't think that connection is with the players and the fans is as close as what it was then. I worked with JT, and JT obviously understands that connection at Chelsea. And whoever came into that club, he talked about it with me, about making sure they understood what it was about. And I have that here at Villa, and all the players, I expect them to, if kids who want autographs, sign the autographs. If they want a photo, have the photo taken. Obviously, the pandemic has put paid to that a little bit, but we feel that we've got a connection now with supporters, because you don't have to have one or two exceptional talents like we had with Jack last year, who was exceptional. If you've got a very good group with a togetherness and you've got a support behind you, you can go and do things. And we all saw what Leicester did, 4 to 5, well, probably more years ago than that now. But, Craig Shakespeare was there, and he said it was just momentum. It was momentum. Shakey's my assistant now. He said at that time we had a good, hard-working team, a great togetherness with the supporters, with the owners, and momentum carried us through.
I totally understand and accept all those things, but it feels to me as if you stand for more than momentum, because you're articulate on the subject of culture. You've quoted watching the All Blacks, you went to see the Bucks, and you used expressions that really made me curious. Like, so going into Milwaukee Bucks, you could immediately sense and see the culture. I'd like to know how. Secondly, I think it's extraordinarily difficult, maybe even more difficult to win games than to create a culture, because you have to have so many lieutenants. You have to know when not to batter somebody for stepping outside the culture, when you have to batter them like you've gone too far, because culture is a slow thing, easily damaged, slow to cook. So those two things, seeing it and recognizing it, how, if you can point it out, but building it, Dean, building it is a fucker of a job.
Yeah, it's a really tough job. I mean, but you talk about how did I know at the Bucks? I felt it when I walked in. There was a professionalism and there was a drive about people. Everybody in there, their behavior. For me, it's the behaviours that you see from people when you meet them for the first time. I walked into that Bucks dressing room. I met Coach Bud, and he engaged with me straight away. I knew nothing about basketball. He knew nothing about soccer, but we engaged straight away. And the similarities that we had, I said, listen, I know nothing about basketball. You know nothing about soccer. But do you know what? We coach well-paid athletes to become better players and better people. How do you deal with it? And we ended up just talking about the human elements that I feel sometimes can get lost. And creating a culture is about that human element. That's not about winning. That's not about football on the training ground. culture is how you behave every day, how you live every day when you come in. And I told a story at Warsaw. I had to do a talk on culture, and we had a player, and I misunderstood him as an under 18 coach at first. I misunderstood him. I thought he was a bit of a wrong un. Give him 2 warning letters straight away. And it wasn't until I sat down with him and he explained to me about how he lived, how he was brought up, and sometimes he was coming into training and he wouldn't have eaten because he didn't want to put on his parents and whatnot. And it learnt me a valuable lesson then. And I thought I need to help him, become a better human being, to be honest, because he needed a little bit of guidance. And he always had talent and he always had drive. But it wasn't until one day he was walking across the canteen and he saw some rubbish on the floor and picked it up and put it in the bin when I went, now he's got a chance. Now he understands what's important. And I think that's a big thing. Knowing what's important, not just for you, but for the people around you, because they're the ones who are going to help you get to where you want to go.
Is it possible that you can only establish a culture as a squad turns round a little bit? Because you get people who are just going, yes, boss, no, boss. And you've not changed them. They're not buying, and they're doing it because they kind of have to. But just like, let's say at the Cliff and Carrington and in Old Trafford, there was from the moment that there was a handover from Pallister and Bruce maybe and Cantona through to the class of 92, they always said that when new people came in from either Britain or the continent, they said, this is our way. This is our way. And it helped. You could see it helped in the all for one, one for all attitude. They played and behaved. Again, it was like Ron Saunders. There was a little bit of playing hard, living hard. But that's how you can make sure that a culture is firmly rooted, because you get your believers and the new ones are just see nothing but. It's when you're starting that it's hard.
Yeah, the starting part is the hard part. Because what you can't do is go into a place and judge a culture straight away because you haven't lived it. I've seen too many managers go into a new club and say, "Oh, they're not fit enough. The culture's not great." You don't know. You haven't lived it. So until you go in there and live it, then you get an idea of what's there. And you go into a training ground and straight away you become the leader of that training ground, whether you like it or not. So people will pick up, they'll pull on your behaviour straight away. And the one thing I try to be is consistent. That's my big word. I remember we went through a sticky spell at Brentford, and Brentford is an unbelievable football club, really, really good people who run it. And we had a sticky spell of runs, and at the end of the season, we had 2 sporting directors, and they said, right, we need to sit down with you and do your appraisal. And I went, oh, okay, an appraisal. I said, never done an appraisal in football before. So I said, well, who actually does your appraisal? And they went, well, actually, Matthew should probably do it, who's the owner, but Matthew's not going to do it. I said, okay, I'm happy to do an appraisal, but me and Rasmus do Phil's, me and Phil do Rasmus's, and Rasmus and Phil do mine. And it was the best learning curve again for me, where I learned so much about them, they learned so much about me, and we just had a 3-way chat where, we talked about, and the one thing they said to me was, even when we were losing, when I went into the training ground, win or lose, always the same. It was, go and get your breakfast, thank the chef, how are you, to the cleaners and the kit men, and that's how it should be. When I first walked into that football club, all of a sudden I'd gone from having 6 members of staff to 26 members of staff. And that was Brentford. And obviously when I've gone from Brentford to Villa, all of a sudden there's more again. And I always say to them, listen, do your job, don't try to justify it. You're here for a reason. You're employed for a reason. If you try to justify it, it means that you want to be seen. Do your job, it's important enough.
But Dean, I mean, again, tell me I'm talking rubbish if I am. I think that the concepts that you're talking about seem wholesome and healthy. They're bound to produce better unity and feeling. But football is absolutely riven with insecurities, patch protection, the idea of sharing information. Even in an assessment, that's a weakness. If I say this, then they, you're preaching evangelically against just about a century of, if not stupidity, then certainly insecurity, I think.
Yeah, I've always said in the 10 years I've been a manager or a head coach, I've never been worried about getting sacked from my job, because I'm not in control of that. I mean, I can win 10 games on the spin and still get sacked. I can lose 10 games on the spin and not get sacked. I'm not in control of that. So I don't worry about that. I worry about my job, which is developing players, developing human beings, and making a really good team for this football club. And I try not to then worry about anything else. And I don't take it home, which, it is an art in itself. I remember when I first got the job at Walsall, and after the game, I went mad at the lads for somebody had made a mistake. And I walked into my office, I had a headache, and I was like, God, I've got to go and do the press now. And I said from that day, I'm not doing that. I said, A, I can't change the result. B, I need these players again next week. And C, the most important thing is the message I get out now to the fans and the players in the press. So after the match now, they get 2 minutes of my time and that's it. And it's never a rant, because I can go through the game again the next day when we review it more logically and with players who are all a little bit calmer, because it is an emotional game. And sometimes you have to take them emotions out of it where you can. During a game, that's the time when it is very hard. But I'm not a ranter and raver on the sidelines. I protect my players. I don't like the opposition bench having a go at them because they're my players. And, probably, and I've calmed myself down a little bit this year, probably have a go at officials too much, because they are human as well and make mistakes. But it's important for me that my players see a consistency, because it allows them to go and be consistent as well. And that's what we're searching for.
A quick cheeky follow-up before my next question from one of our socios, who's one of our members who support the podcast. Dean, when you said never again after that little rant at the players at Brentford, and you said never again for a lot of different reasons. Because that volcanic stuff in certain afternoons or nights still exists. Where does it go?
The volcanic side, where does it go?
But if you've got a feeling like that night at Brentford, you're like, fucking hell, I told them, and look now, or he's been dozing off, and it's spoiling, okay, I'm going to do that on Monday, I'm going to do it with Y Scout, okay, fine. But it's still there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I won't deny it comes out now and again. And I think it has more of an impact when it does come out now and again. If I'm doing it week in, week out, eventually the players are like, yeah. And I've always said there's two things. If you upset the players or you make them bored, you're in trouble as a coach. You're in trouble. You have to make, for me, you have to make training enjoyable, but also a learning experience. They want to come in, they want to work, they want to feel like they've learned something. So when they leave, they can actually feel fulfilled. And that's what I try to do. And one of the big things I've always said, I wanted to be a manager who I would have wanted to be managed by.
Yeah, brilliant.
And it's a big thing, because I remember I made my debut at 17. I have no idea why the manager picked me, but he picked me and I played, and we won 3-0. And, because at that time I didn't understand the game. I don't think I was really coached until I was probably 23, 24. I was told, get the ball, give it Derek Staven. And it was like, yeah, but I can see so many other things. But it was like, but that was the way it was then. The manager and the coaches were authoritarian, and you were told what to do. I think my learning as a player came through playing with the likes of Derek Staven, Des Bremner, Gary Shaw, Kevin MacDonald,
top players.
Grealish. Yeah. And they'd had the best of their careers, but had come down the level to Walsall. And it was a great learning curve for me, learning from all them players.
Well, okay, I was with the volcanic thing. I was worried for you. What do you do with it for you? How do you get rid of it? But we'll set that aside because you answered the question beautifully. Will McLeod is one of our socios, one of our members. Good afternoon. Could you ask for Dean's recollections of a big moment from last season, the 7-2 victory against champions Liverpool? Was anything different about the build-up? What was the match and post-match like from his point of view? Did Dean have any idea before the game that they might be about to do something special?
No idea at all. I'd felt that we was in a good place. Did I expect us to go and beat Liverpool 7-2? No. I can honestly say that. We played them in Project Restart at Anfield, and we played a little bit differently because we felt there was a weakness that we could expose. And we missed our chances in that game, ended up losing the game 2-0. But we just felt that it was the right way to go and play against Liverpool, because they have their identity, the way they play under Jurgen Klopp, and it's fantastic for everybody to see. But my job is to try and expose weaknesses. And, we didn't want to go too far away from that previous game. I mean, we were kind of fortunate last season because we won our first 4 games, but people forget that our first game should have been against Manchester City away, so it could have all been so different. Because they had played late in Europe, that game got cancelled. So our first game was Sheffield United, then we played Fulham away, and then it was the Liverpool game. And on the day, we scored 3 deflected goals, which wrong-footed the goalkeeper. But we created so many chances that Ollie Watkins got a perfect hat-trick and was disappointed because he felt he should have scored 5. And we didn't have a lot of possession because Liverpool are a possession-based team, but we knew the areas that we wanted to exploit when we actually won the ball back. And to be fair, it's the one game where I look back and go, that's where players expertly dealt with the game plan, how we wanted it to. It helped that we had special talent in Jack Grealish. We had a player, Ross Barkley, who was his first game for us, and he was incredible on that game. And Ollie Watkins, who I believe is the best presser in the Premier League.
It felt, watching it, I was really impressed. I'd like to say proud, but it's only now knowing you and listening to you but the relentlessness with when they sniffed a chance, when they never took their foot off. There must have been a moment when some players were going, well, is this real? Do we sit on what we've got? Let's stick, not twist. But it was remorseless. It was ambitious. And to me, okay, you were never going to do that week in, week out, but it told me a lot about the people in that squad and either what you'd got through to them or what the culture was, because it was like, listen, if we sniff a chance, punch, punch, and punch again. That's what I loved about that afternoon.
Well, there was a big thing about it as well, because of who Liverpool were at the time. Even at 5-1 or 6-2, you never felt comfortable because they could go and score goals. So we had to go and continue to be relentless. And my upbringing has always been, I'm not one who sits on a 1-goal lead because I believe if you do, then all you're going to do is bring pressure on. And eventually that pressure is going to tell it with some of the quality of the players you're up against. What relieves you more is by scoring a second goal and going 2-0 up. So that's something that I try and pass on to the players to go and do.
I have to close with 3, 2 of which are a little bit sensitive, so I'm going to be careful about it. But our sponsor C65 say, and it's a simple one, what's your proudest moment as Villa manager?
I'd have to say getting them promoted, simply because it was at Wembley with 40-odd thousand Villa fans there. If there'd have been fans allowed in at West Ham when we stayed up, I'd have probably said that because I thought it was a bigger achievement. But getting promoted in front of all our fans at Wembley, and if I hadn't been the manager, I'd have been on the terraces there. So that was brilliant.
Dean, this is one where we don't know each other well, so I'll understand if you don't want to commit. But Look, and I'm a Scot. I followed Spain through, I was working with Spain throughout the European Championship. And while I'd rather Scotland won matches, I'm not one of those Scots who's anti-English. And I think it's for the benefit of the game that one of the great nations is now competitive again. There's 2 World Cup winning sides, I think under 17, under 19. It's really clear that there's a progression at the England international side, but it brings with it thorny moments. Now, I loved what Tyrone Mings said. 2 things particularly: that while he looked comfortable and dominant after the tournament, I think he did a lot for people who put a front on in life and look one way but are another, and said, look, I felt watched. I felt worried that people were saying he's the guy we're not sure should be in the team. And I think it was terrifically brave to admit that. I know it's becoming more common, but in the years that you and I were growing up, that was never said, never. And I also specifically, in my opinion, liked what you said about Priti Patel, about her fairly aggressive behaviour towards taking the knee at the beginning of the tournament, and then saying, well, the racism heaped on the penalty missers was. Is there anything you want to talk about Tyrone's attitudes and words post-tournament that answer those? Because to me, I was really, really thoroughly impressed by him. It's the way I want footballers to think and speak.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it right from the start. You know, when we were growing up, such insecurities wouldn't be talked about, but they were there. They were there for most people, and anybody who would tell me that they deny they had them, I would debate, because we've all had insecurities. I feel there's a freshness now for people to be able to come out and say what Tyrone did. And it'd be wrong of me to say that I'm proud of Tyrone saying it, because that's the person he is. And he would say, well, you know me, Gaffer, that's what I'll say, what I think. And that's why he's a great member of this football club, and why one of the reasons why I brought him in, because he's thoughtful, he thinks a lot, and he thinks differently sometimes as well. And you know, I like that, because you know, it allows us to talk about different things that we probably wouldn't talk about before. You know, and Tyrone won't mind me telling you this discussion we had. I was querying whether I took the knee this season. I wasn't sure whether it had probably lost a little bit of what we set out for it to do. And Tyrone actually said to me, Gaffer, I would prefer you to do it. He said, because, you know, if we've chosen to take the knee and you don't as our leader, what does that look like? I said, well, that would allow me to actually discuss my reasons for not doing it. But we had a conversation. I decided, no, I will. I'll continue to take the knee. We feel here at Aston Villa a great responsibility, along with Sheffield United, because we were the first clubs who agreed to take the knee. And the reason to do it was to raise awareness to inequality and racism. And I think we've done that now, and we will continue to do it, because as Tyrone said to me, there may be just one child in a playground who goes home and asks his parents why we're doing it. That's important enough then for me. So I understand Tyrone's point when he said that. But I do feel now we need guidance from the authorities on where we go next. You know, we've educated a lot of, not the football world, but how do we go on educating other people, and how does it move on? Because we can't kneel for the next 50 years. You know, and we also know there's certain people we're never going to get to. We understand that, and we have to accept that. But there's got to be some kind of education that goes on there. What's our next step? And I think the authorities now need to get together and decide what that next step is, and give us some guidance.
I'm really grateful for such a clear and articulate answer. And I think that it's, again, I think it relates to creating a culture. I know it's different from creating a culture within a more closed environment like a club, and you're the club's leader, but I still think that's the same missionary work. So the two to close on, I mentioned the Super Cup win over Barcelona. You didn't happen to be at Villa Park that night, did you?
Oh, I did. I was there, yes.
Can I ask?
And my abiding memory of that is Gordon Cowans. The goalkeeper saved the penalty, and Gordon Cowans followed up and scored the rebound, and he got volleyed into the goal. They were vicious that night, Barcelona. I think they had 2 men sent off.
They had both Julio Alberto, who's had a terrible life of suffering, and Marcos Alonso, both sent off. And Big Alan Evans got a red card.
Big Al.
There was no holding back. But, I mean, anyway, you look at it. Wednesday, 26th January, a 2-legged European final. Gary Shaw, Gordon Cowans, Ken McNaught, and a 3-0 win over a side with Ruti, Alexanko, Migueli, Victor Munoz, legend, Bernd Schuster, Perico Alonso, who's Xabi Alonso's dad, Carrasco, Kini, one of the great scorers of all time in Spanish football. I mean, okay, the 1-0 Bayern Munich game is the one, but that must have been only 31,000 at Villa Park, but it must have just felt like heaven, paradise.
It was incredible. I'm not sure a lot of us understood what the Super Cup was at the time. Hence there only being 31,000 there. But it was incredible. It was such an incredible season because we just won the league. The following season, we won the European Cup, and then we're in the European Cup again and the Super Cup. We win the Super Cup, and then we're playing against Juventus in the quarterfinal of the European Cup again, and Boniek's playing, and it was incredible times.
What do you then? This is the last one that I meant that's sensitive, because I want to be delicate. It's only very recently that you lost your dad. What do you owe your dad? What did your dad do for you in life? What did he show you? Not just with the way that he brought you up and your brother up, but just the act of, we sometimes forget how important it is. Take your kids, take your son, take your daughter to football, because he's literally changed and enriched your entire existence on this planet with that simple thing about showing you his love for that club.
Yeah, I mean, he introduced us to football. It was his love. He wasn't a great footballer himself, but he introduced me and my brother to football. And it was hard to get a compliment from my dad. He's the way he was brought up, he wouldn't have had many compliments from his dad. And as I say, he worked in a factory. We didn't see an awful lot of him. He was out at 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, back at 5:30, would eat his dinner, have an hour's sleep, and then walk down the pub for a couple of pints. It was a simple life, but we learned valuable lessons, me and my brother, from my dad because of that. I would say it was my dad's values within the house, but it was probably my mum who brought the family up, because my dad was having to earn the money for us. But when he gave you a compliment, it meant a lot. He would always say that my brother was the better footballer, but unfortunately he found lager. So he could go and have a drink with me, dad.
Discover anything in life, never mind lakes or waterfalls. I discovered lager. He's a great man at mine.
Yeah, so listen, we owe so much to our parents, and they worked hard to make sure we had a holiday each year, whether it be in mid Wales, at Pontins or wherever. And I remember the first time we ever went abroad, we went on a 28-hour coach journey to get to Spain. Such was the times then, but we knew how hard they worked for it, and we appreciated it and realised that we had to go and work hard, to be successful in our lives as well.
Well, Dean Smith, West Midlands chess champion, leader, culture maker, admirable Villa manager. This has been pure joy. It's only out of the respect I was taught from my dad that I'm stopping now, because I could do another day of this. Thank you. All of us will be watching Villa with expectancy and hope, and the expectancy that we'll enjoy watching them, because your team plays a brand of football that, win, lose or draw, it is enthralling, it's entertaining. And I don't think there's anything that you could look back and say to the 81-82 side and say, we don't try to do that. Okay, maybe the levels they reached are still to come for you. but there are direct traces between you and that team and your team and that team. And that's the biggest compliment I can hand out. It's been a thrill speaking to you. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
No worries. Thank you. Good to speak to you, mate.